Canada has some of the most stringent coronavirus mandates in the world. For instance, Ontario locked down earlier this month and will only reopen its restaurants, dining rooms, and gyms and movie theaters at the end of the month. One might have to ask, are these lockdowns putting both a strain on businesses as well as employees who have to work there? How much should a government require its citizens in the name of public safety? For the people to the north of the U.S., truckers are experiencing unfair policies and they ain't going to take it anymore. Let the truth compel you, and let's get rid of this filth in another segment of the Filthy Truth Exposed. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Stop Bilbo.
Well, we have a big topic today, right? I mean, these trucks are huge. They're threatening, but the protests seem pretty peaceful so far from what I've seen.
Absolutely, man. There's a couple signs, people holding up with hockey sticks, and there's people that are gathering at the Parliament, as well as trucks that are parked, in different places, blocking stuff. So, they're making their voices heard. So,
I've seen footage of the cops are helping they're being friendly with what's going on. They're kind of guiding the trucks in and bring them in line so they can block the streets that they want to block. So it seems like they're working with the police. Now.
So let's give a little backstory. So basically what's going on right now is thousands of protesters are gathering in front of the Canada's Parliament. It began as a movement by truckers to challenge government vaccinations. Vaccination mandates. But it's kind of spread into other anti-government grievances. So, so that's what's going on, and I think
it's spreading into Australia. That's what I was reading was.
Oh, wow.
In Australia, the truckers are doing some sort of protesting there as well.
So, I understand why they're upset, legitimately, because it's like before they were exempt, from that, from having to have vaccines and stuff like that. So, and now it's like they're required to. I think I said this when I talked to you earlier about this subject. I'm like, I don't see why they're being singled out. I guess they're not exactly being singled out, but it seems like truckers aren't. I don't see why it's so important. They're going across state lines, and I don't know what they're spreading. I don't know how they'd be spreading the coronavirus. You know what I mean?
I guess the government probably would say something like, well, if they go into another country, then they could catch something and bring it back into the country.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want the disease to be brought into their country. But to me, that would be the only reason to enforce a vaccine mandate. But these vaccines, the problem is the vaccines don't prevent a person catching it, and they don't prevent transmission. So I feel like there's no reason for the mandate in the first place. I don't really understand why these mandates are being enforced, except for there's some sort of control that the government wants over people. And I feel like that's what the truckers are fighting against. They don't want to be controlled. They don't want to be forced, especially when they realize getting the vaccine is not going to help protect my community.
Yeah, I think those are all really important points. For me, personally, I feel like vaccines are, just like they've been throughout history. Vaccines have always been used as one of the ways that you can treat different things. So for me personally, I'm not against vaccines. Like when I heard about vaccines during this time, I didn't think, I'm worried about it. But there are people who are against the vaccines for whatever reason, and they have the right to be. They have the right to that.
This vaccine that we're talking about now is a new technology, so it's not the old school technology where it's a dead virus. That's not the technology that's being used. So it's different than vaccines from the past in that sense, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Yeah,
it's actually kind of a little bit immaterial too. Like, there's going to be people that say it is effective, or you and I both agree that it's not effective in the idea that you can still spread it to other people. The only point that I can say is that is just about the viral load, that there's, people that don't get sick as badly. And so they would be less sick. So they wouldn't be spreading it as much, or there would be less hospitalizations. So those are all things. But again, it's up to a person to decide that. And the other thing too is that I feel like a lot of times these CEOs and, managers and stuff, some of these people, they're not always going to wear a mask, or they do whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? You could see that all the time, but they require their employees to do it.
Governor Gavin Newsom is getting backlash for posing with no mask on in a picture with Magic Johnson at the 49ers-Rams game yesterday. The rest of the state is under an indoor mask mandate, and the stadium itself does have mask rules in place.
Political reporter Morgan Ryder joins us now with the governor's explanation to all of this. He was asked about this at a separate news conference today. Morgan?
Yeah, and this is the second high-profile time in which Governor Gavin Newsom is seen defying his own rules. The last time at the French Laundry, that's what really set off the recall. Now, today, in response to the photo from yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom said that it was Magic Johnson who asked him to take a photo, and that's when he took off his mask for just 1 second. But Heather and Carlo, the videos and pictures surfacing today paint a very different story. Magic Johnson posted these photos with San Francisco Mayor London Breed, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, and Governor Gavin Newsom.
Magic was generous enough to ask me for a photograph, and in my left hand's the mask, and I took a photo. The rest of the time I wore it, as we all should.
Newsom reiterated it was only for a moment.
Took the mask off for a brief second.
But this video of Fox's game broadcast does show Governor Newsom approaching Magic Johnson himself without wearing the mask to begin with.
I was trying to be gracious, and I made a mistake,
But it's not just the photo with Magic. This photo from the LA Rams fan cam shows Newsom relaxing with his mask off in the 70,000 person capacity indoor arena. The entire state is under an indoor mask mandate. School kids too. Republicans seize on the maskless images. Berkeley epidemiologist John Swartzberg told me the governor's actions have consequences.
Whenever our leadership doesn't follow the same public health policies as it promotes for the public, it undermines public health, and it jeopardizes the public's health.
I did reach out to the governor's office this morning on why the governor's explanation and the videos and pictures do not align.
To do it. So that's one thing that always bothers me, is that there's like two sets of standards, So it's like, if a CEO says, I don't want to get a shot, no one even questions it because he's the boss. You know what I mean? It's like they're not being forced to do something against their will. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you feel there's the inequities or whatever?
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you're against the idea of a mandate then?
Yeah. I mean, I think I like the idea of encouragement. Like if you think that something is working and and you think this is a good policy, which I think that there's a lot of effort that went into the technology of the vaccine. It's not like it's something that, is like they just one day was like, oh, well, here's a vaccine, like I think there's some effort that went into it, and it's the current science that we have now. You could say maybe it's not definitely not foolproof, and it's not quite there yet. So maybe we need to wait till more things come out, but really this isn't about that. To me, the issue is that you're imposing your will on others. I think most people think that people should have the freedom to decide, if they want to get it. I think it's okay to encourage it, but no one should be forced, I guess, is how I feel.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think these truckers that are protesting, why do you think they don't want this vaccine in their body?
That is a really good question. Well, I think it's okay. Let me just say one thing though. I think the majority of people in Canada, I think it's like 77% have been vaccinated. So I believe they have a higher rate of vaccination than we do, And so one of the things when we talk about mistrust, in governments and stuff, is that when the population trusts their government, they're more inclined to, allow for things like vaccinations. You know what I mean? So, for instance, like in Canada, healthcare is like really inexpensive, and like the prescription drugs are fairly inexpensive. There's no way that someone from Canada would ever trade what they have to what we have.
Oh,
So
right.
so because of that, they can get away with being a little more strict because there's more trust between the people and their government. Whereas in our country, people that's my point, is that people already, before the pandemic even, were already kind of upset about things. We're already mad about the fact that prescription drugs were really high, that some people had to go into bankruptcy, just to pay their bill, and how unfair. And then you had people that were like kind of the opposite, that were like, I don't believe in socialized medicine. It's like I want to do whatever I want, until they get sick. And then they realize that you can lose your house. You can lose everything that you have. Spending a week in the hospital is incredibly expensive. Whereas in Canada, not so much. You know what I mean? You get sick in Canada and, it's paid for. You know what I mean? You pay more in taxes, but you get what you pay for. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, so the government provides the healthcare for its citizens. So and it seems like there's a higher level of trust.
Yeah.
As far as the citizens trusting their government providing medical care. So then why is there this outpouring of truckers and then people on the streets who don't drive trucks supporting these people deciding that they don't want to be forced to take this? If there's a higher level of medical trust with the government, why don't they want this?
Well, I think what it comes down to is that it's people see it as an infringement on their rights, and because it is, in a lot of ways it is. Like I said, I think encouraging people to do something is okay, but a lot of times there's more stringent in Canada than they are in the United States. And so, for instance, like if you want to go to a restaurant or do something, they want you to wear a mask, or they want you to be vaccinated, or whatever. There's different things that they may require. And so people are kind of in lockdown mode, they're stuck in their house, and it's made people agitated, made people upset, and it's, so that causes all kinds of problems, And so what you see is frustrations, I think, is what you're really witnessing, But again, I don't live in Canada, so that would be my guess. That would be how I think that they probably, see things. But that's my take on it. I don't know.
I feel like if these people thought that the vaccine would help their family, but not only their family, but help their community, places they drive around in, and places that they live, that since there's this higher level of trust, that they would be willing to get it. So
yeah,
I feel like it's a freedom issue. They're like, my body, my choice, but also they're saying this is actually something we don't want in our body because we think it's not right for us for whatever reason, whether they think it's unsafe or they think it's not effective, or like we were talking about the last episode about microchips. Oh, maybe there's a microchip in it, something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't really know the exact reason. I mean, it's probably multiple of different reasons. It's inconvenience, there's people that just for religious reasons, they may not want it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, the protests are growing, but Trudeau has said that no matter what happens in the protests, he said that the people are behind him. Majority of people are behind him, and so he doesn't really care. And then the other issue too, which I think is a small point, but I think it is important, and that's that truckers that are moving goods within Canada, I believe don't need to be vaccinated, but the United States has said that if you come from Canada and you come into the United States, that you'll have to have proof of vaccination. So in a sense, Trudeau is just he's kind of having a policy that already sort of exists for truckers. They would, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing, but if they come into the United States, which they're going to be doing, right, they're going to be stopped at the border anyway. So in other words, let's just say that we had something where they didn't need the vaccination in Canada. Well, once they get to the border, on the U.S. side, they're going to ask for it. So it kind of makes sense that Trudeau is saying you need to be vaccinated because that's you're crossing international law or your international, borders. So in a weird way, I kind of see his point. It's weird because I actually feel for the truckers. Like I feel like they're important to our society. You know what I mean? They move goods back and forth, right? We need our truckers, so, but, anyways, yeah,
They are. I think that they're realizing, or they already know, like, well, they do have a lot of power because they move the stuff that we need back and forth, probably including vaccines. Probably they're moving that, medical equipment and stuff like that back and forth. So they have a lot of power. So they're trying to use it.
Yeah.
Do you think that governments should mandate medical procedures? Do you think that that's something that government should have within its power?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, here's my feeling. Okay, so I think in certain industries, when you're, especially like, say, I'm thinking like the healthcare industry, where you're working with patients and things like that, there should be, okay, like, because I used to do, I was a nursing assistant, right? And I had to do different procedures. And so there's sometimes people have a certain type of disease. We have to wear a gown. There's all this stuff that you have to put on because you're walking into an area where you could catch something. And so they require that. So that seems to me makes sense. A surgeon, same thing. A surgeon wears a mask. There's certain things that they do. They wash their hands a certain way. So it's a procedural thing. And it's to protect the public, And vaccinations, that's part of it too. Because if they get sick, then they spread that to other people, right? So they can, remember, you can catch the COVID, but you're asymptomatic. That just means you can continually spread it, but you're going to spread it a lot more if you actually come down with a heavy case of it. So there's different issues with that. So the only time where I feel like I see it as mandatory is in kind of in the healthcare field. And then there's certain other types of jobs, but I'm off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure. But I'd say for the most part, even in those healthcare jobs, there would always be exemptions for certain things. So if, for religious reasons or different reasons. So that's the thing, right? Because here's the trouble. We do have the public safety part of it. And then we also have the religious freedom, so that's a part of it too. So, I mean, I wanted to say, we should just get rid of it entirely. But the reality, if I'm being honest with you, is I do feel like in certain situations, I can understand the mandate. But I don't think it's not going to be the way to fully, fix this problem. This problem is going to have to be fixed in a number of ways. So, I mean, I think vaccines is a part of that. I think getting a good vaccine, but also what it comes down to, I think, is the situation where, and this is what I think is going to happen eventually, is that a person gets COVID, and then all that it will mean is that when they go to the doctors, that they go, here you go, and they give you like a pill or something, and then it's like you get the sniffles, you know what I mean? Like it goes burp, and it just kills the virus, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you turn it to the pandemic to an endemic is what they call it,
Right.
That's where we need to go, but we're not there yet, So it's but here's a question for you, right? Is like,
okay,
if you looked back at these different say the Spanish flu or polio or all these different things that vaccines were created. Imagine if people had the attitude of that they weren't important. Oh, the vaccine, I'm not going to take that. You know what I mean? Like so if people had that same attitude, it's very possible that polio could still be around today, or or something like chicken pox. If you could get it, it would kill you, right? Like these different things that we eradicated, it's how did they get eradicated? It's because people's attitudes and the science were working in lockstep together. So, you can have this thing of where you feel, oh, I'm going to be principled. I should be a principled person, which I am that way too. I feel the same way you do in a way, but I also think that there is something about, that we don't just do things just because it pleases us. We do things because we're a part of society. That it's not just about, what I want. It's
I agree
how
with
I
that.
contribute. I guess that's where I kind of feel about it, but
I agree with that. And it's important to help other people and especially protect other people if you can protect people from getting sick. But a person has to feel like what they're doing is actually going to help the people that they want to help. If they're not convinced of it, then forcing them that it will protect other people, but they're not convinced, that's not really going to get them to do it. Then that's why the mandates have to come into effect there, I think, because people aren't convinced of the facts. They don't understand it, or they have a different way of thinking, and it's better to be educated than forced.
I agree.
That's the best way to say it.
No, I think you're right.
Now, so you're talking about the mandates and then the exemptions. There's religious exemptions and maybe medical exemptions. Like if you have a certain thing that the vaccine would interact with in a bad way, then you can get an exemption. But the religious exemptions I find really interesting. I think that I feel like there should be religious exemptions because we have freedom of religion. But at the same time, why does say we had a vaccine that really does prevent transmission, then why would your religion allow you to, transmit the disease? Why would there be a religious exemption?
Well, I mean, religious exemption isn't for everything, so you can't always fall back on that. But we, at least in the United States, we have the freedom of religion. It should be freedom from religion too, but it doesn't say that. But I always add that,
It should,
They should add that, right?
Yeah.
But so that's where you have like two kind of opposing ideas happening, right? You have public safety and you have that sort of thing, like following a certain etiquette. And then there's also the freedom of religion, and there's also just the freedom of choice as far as like what people want to do with their bodies. We apply the same thing about abortion. So we also have, in a lot of ways, the idea of and I think in the beginning they kind of like pushed for mandates in the United States, and it was really pushed against. People didn't like the idea, and people are just, they're kind of tired of the pandemic, so they're like, it's kind of funny. It's like people are like, it's over, I'm done with it. They think if they're done with it, then the virus sort of magically goes away. But I actually totally understand that idea, because at some point in your life, you have to decide, like, do I take a risk but live and, sort of isolate myself forever? At some point you feel like I need to just live life,
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of people, that's what's happening. So, I really feel for these guys, and I'm talking about the truckers, like not just them, but anybody. It's like this is something that they don't want to do, and a lot of them are. I mean, these protesters, they're out in frigid cold weather. Man, I'm a wimp. If I was out there, I would have the hardest time. In negative 10 degree temperature, man. See you, man. I'm at home drinking some hot cocoa. Like I can't be handling that. I guess it's something you got to get used to. So, but anyways, that's all I gotta say, man. Is there anything else you want to add, or did we miss?
Well, I don't really have anything to add, but I'm really curious to see where this goes with the truckers. And I think the idea of, I think we both agree that it's my body, my choice. I think people should have the right to choose what goes into their body.
Definitely, yeah.
Overall, yeah.
Good points. Well, thanks again. Like and subscribe, and this is great. We're gonna, cover this. Keep track of what's going on. I'm sure the protests are gonna get bigger and bigger. So, this is exciting to watch. So we'll see what happens. So thanks again. Bye for now.